I was finishing filling in the patient's medical file when I heard screams and the stomping of many legs coming from the corridor. Looking out of the office, I literally froze in place. In the middle of the hospital hall, there was a huge adult lynx. When the first shock let go a little, I was able to see the animal better. Then I realized that it was not an ordinary lynx, but a completely white one. Her black tufted ears twitched nervously, and in her mouth, this incredible predator carefully held a tiny white lynx kitten. People in panic ran in different directions. Someone was screaming. Someone was trying to barricade themselves in the offices, and an elderly woman in the reception room fell into a daze right at the registration post. The white lynx was standing still. Her amber eyes carefully watched what was happening, but I did not see aggression in her pose. After a few minutes, the police broke into the hall with their weapons ready, and the situation could have ended tragically. One of the officers was already aiming at the animal, ready to shoot. I jumped forward and waved my hands, shouting that they should not shoot, because a few years ago I worked as a volunteer in the African Reserve, and I had a lot of experience communicating with lions, leopards, and other large predators. The police intervened for a second, and I quickly explained that if the lynx had come here with aggression, she would have already attacked, but instead she was just standing with the kitten in her mouth, as if waiting for something. The senior officer looked at me suspiciously, but still ordered his subordinates to lower their weapons and give me a chance, although he warned that in the slightest danger they would shoot. I slowly, very slowly, began to approach the white lynx, trying not to make sudden movements and keep my hands in sight. My heart was pounding like crazy, because even with the experience of working with predators, you understand that in front of you is an animal that with one blow of the paw can break a person's neck. When there was about 3 meters between us, the lynx suddenly carefully bent her head and put the white kitten on the floor, after which she took a few steps back, avoiding my expecting gaze. There was so much trust and at the same time despair in this gesture that I was out of breath. I realized that this was not just a lynx, but a mother lynx, and she did not come to threaten people, but to ask for help for her kitten. I sat down next to the kitten and immediately saw that the baby was in critical condition. The kitten was about a week or 2 old, but he was sluggish, barely moving, his little eyes were half closed, and breathing was intermittent and difficult. I carefully took the kitten in my arms. He was very hot from a high temperature and very dehydrated. The skin on the neck did not spread, which meant a lack of fluid in the body. The white lynx was tense when I picked up her kitten, but did not move from her place, only made a low, hoarse growl, which sounded more like a play than a threat. I quickly called my colleagues, and in a minute 2 more nurses ran out to us, although they tried to keep a safe distance from the lynx. We transferred the kitten to the operating room, and the mother lynx slowly followed us, ignoring the policemen who nervously squeezed their weapons. When we started examining the kitten, the picture turned out to be even worse than I thought. In addition to severe dehydration and high temperature, the kitten had signs of infection, possibly from dirt and anti-sanitary. Plus he was exhausted so much that each rib protruded under the white fur. The lynx sat at the door of the operating room and refused to leave, making a disturbing growl every time the kitten squeaked weakly. I understood that she was on the verge. The mother's instinct made her be next to the kitten, but at the same time, she restrained herself and did not attack us. Between the procedures, I approached the lynx, quietly talked to her in a calming tone that I used in Africa with wounded felines, and she seemed to understand that we were trying to help. We put a dropper on the kitten to replenish the fluid in the body, gave a heat reducer and a wide-spectrum antibiotic, because the infection could be any, and we could not wait for the results of the tests. While we were fighting for the life of the kitten, one of the police officers, an experienced detective, began to collect information about where the white lynx could have appeared in the city. He asked witnesses who saw the lynx running down the streets early in the morning, checked the surveillance cameras, and followed her route in the opposite direction. A couple of hours later, the detective returned with the information. The cameras recorded that the White Lynx appeared from the industrial area on the outskirts, where there is an old warehouse with a high fence and barbed wire, which the locals had long considered abandoned. The detective contacted the Wildlife Protection Service, and they decided to conduct reconnaissance from the drone before breaking in there, because if this is really an illegal pet trade site, the criminals may try to destroy evidence, that is, kill animals. When the drone rose above the territory, the operator saw a picture from which the blood froze in the veins. In the yard, under the scorching sun, there were rows of metal cages, in which there were dozens of wild animals, and many of them were extremely rare species. It became clear that this was a large-scale operation on illegal trading of exotic animals, and it was necessary to act immediately. The special forces organized a lightning raid so that the criminals did not have time to do anything, and I was asked to go with them as a specialist in wild animals, to assess the condition of the animals and help with their transportation. When we broke into the territory, several men tried to grab the weapons, but the special forces acted so quickly and professionally that they were detained for a few seconds. One of the owners of the pet warehouse managed to grab a gun and ran to the cages, obviously intending to shoot the animals to hide the evidence, but the sniper neutralized the threat before he had time to shoot. What I saw in these cages made me clench my fists in rage. In the cramped, dirty metal boxes under the open sun, incredible creatures were drowning. A white lion with faded hair lay in the corner of its cage, barely raising its head. Next to it was a black panther with protruding ribs. Its emerald eyes burned with hunger and anger. In another cage, a snow leopard was sitting, pressing a tiny cub to its side, which squeaked pitifully. And not far away, in a very small cage, there was an orangutan cub. Its almost human eyes looked with such longing that I wanted to immediately pull out the door. In a separate cage, I found a red panda, which usually lives in cool mountain forests, and here it was suffocating from the heat, sticking out its tongue, and often breathing. All the animals were in different degrees exhausted, dehydrated. Some had wounds and bruises from the cramped cages. I tried to quickly assess who needed urgent help and coordinated the actions of the arriving veterinarians who brought transport cages, water, and medicines. While we were dealing with the animals, the police interrogated the detainees, and one of them, a junior accomplice, who clearly did not want to get the same term as the headman, began to tell everything. It turned out that the White Lynx was brought here pregnant only a couple of weeks ago. Her kitten was born right in a dirty, stuffy cage a few days ago, and the owners immediately realized that they had an incredible rarity on their hands. White lynxes are already found extremely rarely, one in thousands of ordinary ones, and the fact that the kitten turned out to be white made this pair priceless for rich collectors. The problem was that the mother lynx herself was exhausted and hungry. She had little milk, and the kitten began to weaken almost immediately after birth. The criminals tried to feed the kitten with some cheap antibiotics bought without a prescription, hoping that he would somehow hold out until they found a buyer ready to pay hundreds of thousands for such a rarity. But the wrong treatment only exacerbated the situation. The kitten developed an infection. He became weaker and weaker, and the lynx, apparently thanks to her maternal instinct, felt that her baby was dying. The accomplice told that last night they found that the lynx somehow managed to break the lock on the cage, grabbed the kitten, and ran through the hole in the fence, which they had previously made themselves to remove the garbage. She crossed a few kilometers around the city, instinctively moving towards a crowd of people. Despair overpowered the natural fear of humans. The fact that she got to the hospital was pure luck, but this luck saved the life of her kitten. The rescue operation in the nursery took several hours. Each animal had to be examined, stabilized, and placed in a transport cage. The white lion had to be literally carried on stretchers. He was so weak. The black panther hissed and gnawed until the veterinarian gave her a sedative. The snow leopard did not let anyone get close to his cub until I showed him that I had food and water in my hands. The orangutan cub grabbed me with his small hands and refused to let go, as if he was afraid that he would be put back in the cage. All animals were distributed to specialized rehabilitation centers and reserves around the world. The white lion was sent to a large reserve in South Africa, where several individuals of his species had already lived. The black panther went to the rehabilitation center for large cats, where she had to be restored for a long time. The snow leopard and cub were transferred to a high-altitude reserve, where conditions are created for them that are as close to natural as possible. The orangutan cub flew to the primate rehabilitation center, where he will be taught the skills necessary for life in the wild. And the red panda went to the zoo with the program of preserving rare species. As for the criminals, they were arrested and charged with illegal trade in wild animals, with cruel treatment of them and the creation of a threat to public safety. It turned out that this group worked for an international network of smugglers who supplied rare animals to rich clients around the world. The illegal warehouse existed for only a few months, but during this time, dozens of animals passed through it, most of which were already sold and exported abroad. The White Lynx and her kitten were sent to one of the best reserves for wildcats, where they were allocated a huge aviary with a natural landscape, a pond, and many shelters. For the first few days, the kitten was still weak, but under the supervision of experienced veterinarians, and thanks to the care of the mother, who now received normal nutrition, he began to recover quickly. A week later, his temperature normalized, the infection receded, and the baby began to gain weight. 3 months passed before I was able to escape and visit the lynx with her kitten in the reserve. When I arrived, the employees took me to their aviary, and what I saw filled my heart with incredible joy. The white lynx lay in the shade of a large tree, and next to her was a noticeably grown and stronger kitten. His white fur shone in the sun. His eyes were lit with curiosity and energy. When I came closer, the lynx raised her head, looked at me, and I could swear that a glimpse of recognition flashed in her amber eyes. The kitten jumped around the mother, trying to catch her short, bobbed tail. She patiently allowed him to play, sometimes gently pushing his nose when he was too carried away. The employees of the reserve said that the white lynx turned out to be an amazingly calm and caring mother. She teaches the kitten everything he needs, and he has every chance to grow up healthy and strong. A few years later, when the kitten becomes an adult, he is planned to be included in the program of breeding rare white lynxes to preserve this unique genetic variant. Standing at the fence of the enclosure and watching this peaceful scene, I thought about how the lynx had overcome several kilometers through an unfamiliar city, full of danger, risking her own life just to find help for her dying kitten. Motherly love turned out to be stronger than the instinct of self-preservation, stronger than fear of people, stronger than all the obstacles that stood in her way. Thanks to this motherly love, the little white lynx got a second chance. He will grow up free, safe, next to his mother, who risked everything just for him to survive.